The sound of fresh blood dripping echoed through the stone cellars of the palace, and that was only the first greeting of the new day. On the morning of March 15th, 1453, in the dimly lit rooms beneath Topkapi, 10-year-old Milos let out the most unbearable scream. The air was filled with the sharp smell of metal and the barely concealing aroma of incense. But neither the smoke nor the acrid smell of frankincense could drown out the moans of the children. His hands, bound with ropes, trembled with pain as the court surgeon sharpened his blade. This was not a medical operation, but systematic cruelty designed to erase everything human from the boy. At that moment, he ceased to be Milos from the Serbian countryside, and soon he would cease to be a Christian. Soon he would be made a slave to the Sultan, renamed Suleiman, and thrown at his feet. The blade cut not only flesh, it cut off the child's future as a man, his personality, his soul. They say that the body does not lie, and Milos's body, now Suleiman's, spoke of a cruelty that only the most perverted authority could contain. In that damp hall where the walls absorbed the screams, other boys also froze in agony. Some lost consciousness with silent cries, others fell into shock, but all followed the same path, from living beings to luxury goods for the harem of Sultan Mehmed II. The surgeons worked coldly, like machines, having honed the procedure to perfection. For them, the son of a Balkan village and his peers were nothing more than raw materials, valued not by their names or dates of birth, but by their suitability according to the papers in the Grand Vizier's office. To understand how Milos ended up here, let's turn to the green valleys of Serbia, where just 3 months ago this boy was running barefoot through the wheat fields. He was born in 1343 in a tiny village near Belgrade, when Serbia still had a shred of independence under the despot Dusan Branković. His father, a mighty blacksmith, forged plows and sickles for his neighbors, while his mother spun wool, singing old Serbian songs about battles and heroes. Milos had eyes the color of spring meadows and a ringing laugh that echoed through the wooden houses. He raced down slippery paths, sailed paper boats in puddles, and openly stole apples from the priest's orchard, then confessed honestly when he wept before the confessional. His world was unpretentious and cozy. The smell of hot bread, the smoke of ham on a spit, the incense in the church on Sundays. But ever since the Ottomans introduced the Devshirme system, a blood tax, after the Battle of Kosovo in 1389, no Christian boy could feel safe. In essence, it was a military rotation. Every 3 to 5 years, representatives of the Sultan went from village to village and selected children between the ages of 8 and 15. Officially, they were taken into the elite Janissary corps, but in reality, the most beautiful, fair-skinned, and fair-haired were selected for the darkest purposes. Milos's family had heard rumors of fugitives hiding their children in the woods or dressing them in dresses to conceal their gender. But no one escaped the watchful eyes of the Ottoman administration. The collectors organized their trips strictly according to the tax lists of each village. When cavalry arrived in their village in the winter of 1402, Janissaries and local traders stood behind the officials. They knew everyone. The choice fell on Milosha, fair skin, large eyes, slender figure. His father twisted his mustache and scattered silver, but the Ottomans took what they wanted. His mother rushed to the warriors' saddles, begging for mercy, but her cries were drowned out by the soldiers' boots. The caravan journey to Constantinople lasted 2 months. Chains of children clanked on the mountain passes. They trudged through pouring rain and bitter cold, eating only dry bread. Those who could not bear the march fell dead in the ditches, their blood staining the earth, their cries silenced forever. Milos quickly learned the main law of survival. Do not cry and do not resist. You either kept quiet or disappeared. He made himself invisible when the guards demanded it and obeyed without a word so as not to become another corpse. Constantinople greeted him with the aroma of spices, incense, and the undeniable power of the empire. The high marble terraces of Topkapi Palace rose above the Bosphorus in the rays of the sun, like a golden symbol of grandeur. But for the children of the Devshirme, this palace was just another prison with luxury on display. They arrived in the city at night when the silhouettes of the minarets stood out against the starry sky, so different from their native Serbian sky. There they were divided into groups. The strong and unremarkable went to the Janissary military corps. The weak and sickly were sent to study bureaucracy, and the most beautiful were given a third path. Now Milos lay on the cold marble, his life shattered by a single stroke of a knife. Soon he would be given a new name, Suleiman, and he would become nothing more than a cog in the enormous state machine. The boy's sovereignty had long been lost, but it was here, in the dark basements of Topkapi, that the most cruel page of his fate was written. A story of innocence trampled underfoot for the sake of the ambitions of the great Sultan. They did not dream of swords and scrolls. They were being prepared for the most brutal of duties. Milos, a 15-year-old Christian from the Balkans, found himself in the palace school of Endirun, in the inner courtyard of Istanbul's Topkapi, but not in the bright classrooms where the future elite were educated. He was placed in a special compartment behind high walls with round-the-clock guards. There were 30 other boys from Serbia, Wallachia, and Bulgaria, deprived of their childhood and doomed to serve the empire with their bodies. The first shock for them began with their forced conversion to Islam. To the sound of the guards' footsteps, they were forced to repeat the Shahada, the Muslim profession of faith, without understanding the meaning of the Arabic words. Then each of them was deprived of their old name. Milos became Layman, Dmitri became Ahmed, Alexander became Mustafa. With each new name, a piece of their former life disappeared. This was followed by education. The children learned Turkish, learned to read the Quran in classical Arabic, perform ablutions, and perform the obligatory namaz. They were taught music, poetry, and the dances of the Sultan's court. The young men's bodies were gently anointed with fragrant oils, dressed in the finest silks, and treated to exotic dishes. But behind this luxury lay a sinister plan, to prepare them as living jewels for the highest chambers. After several months, the decisive stage arrived. Early in the morning, before dawn, the boys were herded into underground chambers, where court surgeons were waiting with scalpels as sharp as razors and bloody bandages. The castration operation was carried out using ancient methods honed over centuries. Each movement took a single moment, an incision. Then the wounds were cauterized with red-hot irons to stop the bleeding. Only a few survived. The rest were placed in hot sand up to their chests to dry out any remaining fluid and speed up healing. Of the 10 boys, only 3 or 4 survived, and the bodies of the dead were thrown into the Bosphorus Strait like useless cargo. When Layman finally came to his senses and was able to lean on a pillow without a faint ringing in his head, he realized that his body had lost its freedom forever. It now belonged to the Padishah and no one else. After long weeks of recovery, the most sophisticated program began, the education of future eunuchs. They were brought to halls strewn with Persian carpets and silk pillows, where senior eunuchs who had undergone this ordeal under Mehmed II's father taught them the intricacies of their new role. They showed them how to massage the Sultan's wealthy guests to relieve their nervous tension, pointed out the points of pleasure and pain on the body, and forced them to learn erotic songs in Turkish, Arabic, and Persian. The young men were trained in exquisite dances, which they performed in transparent women's tunics, decorated with pearls and gold patterns that emphasized their androgynous beauty. But the most important component was the so-called intimate school. Experienced eunuch instructors who had survived this horror themselves told them what was expected of them in the private chambers of the viziers, beys, and the padishah himself. They demonstrated positions and techniques that went beyond the most perverted fantasies. Lyman quickly realized that this school had its own hierarchy. The most beautiful and skilled were immediately placed in a privileged group and sent straight to the Sultan's court. The competition was inhuman. Year after year, the young men competed fiercely for the favor of the overseers and guards, desperately hiding their fear of shame and torture. Some were ransomed from prison with lavish gifts. Others were broken by starvation, whips, or imprisonment in dungeons where only hunger and cold moaned. Mehmed II himself, who in 1453, at the age of just 21, captured Constantinople, valued these eunuchs not only as instruments of carnal pleasure, but also as symbols of the complete subjugation of hostile Christian lands. It is said that his personal collection numbered more than 40 eunuchs, and every time he brought them to his palace, it was a demonstrative gesture of power. Not only the armies of his enemies had been defeated, but their souls as well. At night, in the dark halls of Topkapi, by the light of lamps and dark silks, rituals of humiliation unfolded. The Sultan sent a sign. A blue handkerchief on the table meant music and dance. A glass of wine placed upside down invited intimacy. Lyman was first chosen at the age of 12. Weak and trembling, he realized that his childhood was over and a new life had begun with the heavy burden of slavery and eternal fear. Imagine you are washed with pink water, hung on silk, and with one step led to a man whose name will decide whether you live or die. That night broke him forever. He spent 6 months recovering from a brutal operation and endured the same amount of grueling training. On that very night, the senior eunuchs poured buckets of rose water over his head, dressed him in semi-transparent silk, and led him through corridors lined with thick carpets to the Sultan's bedroom. He felt that he was about to cross the line of no return. What happened within the walls of that room with tapestries from Bursa cannot be described without betraying human dignity. When it was over, the Sultan gave him a gold ring with an emerald, a sign that he was accepted into permanent service. For 2 years, he served Mehmed II personally. During this time, he developed what is known as the empty gaze, when the body stands in the palace doorway, but the soul wanders through fields of horror inaccessible to ordinary people. Without testicles, his growth froze at the level of an eternal teenager. His skin became as soft as a woman's, his voice as high as a child's, and his mind held secrets that could astonish even a hardened adult. He was beautiful in a way that executioners appreciated, androgynous, vulnerable, forever young. But at the same time, he learned the rules of power in the harem. He soon noticed that some eunuchs, after serving for years, rose through the ranks. They became supervisors of newcomers, managers of the Sultana's chambers, and even close advisors to the rulers, who valued their complete dependence. It was a cruel paradox. The victims of the system became its executioners. The opportunity for advancement came in 1481 when Mehmed II died. The new Sultan Bayezid had different preferences and restructured the harem. He was already 18 years old, had mastered all the dark arts he had been taught, and was promoted to mentor for new eunuchs. His task was to reproduce on children what he himself had gone through, to teach them to survive as instruments of someone else's will. This betrayal of his own childhood innocence haunted him throughout his life. Every frightened glance from a young captive brought back the image of the little Serb he once was. Every lesson in the art of seduction pierced the memory of his irretrievably lost innocence with sharp pain. But the alternative, death, forced him to hold on, and the instinct for survival proved stronger than human dignity. Decades later, He saw hundreds of boys go down this road. He witnessed many deaths during castration and saw the strongest break under the weight of impossible demands. He learned who was more likely to survive torture, who would appeal to this or that guest of the Sultan's court, how to squeeze the maximum benefit out of each courtier. Serbian songs and Orthodox prayers used to echo in his head, but now it was filled with heartless calculations, commercial formulas for trading human flesh. At the age of 40, his artificial youth began to fade. He became one of the most powerful eunuchs in the harem. He controlled the upbringing of more than 200 slave boys, disposed of funds equal to the income of an entire province, and had personal access to the sultans, who trusted him because of his irrevocable dependence. He achieved perverse success, gaining power, wealth, and influence, all at the cost of hundreds of disfigured children's bodies and the ruins of his own humanity. He died in 1523, at the age of 80, on a silk bed in the same palace where he had once been tortured. According to the only surviving, have you heard of the Devshirme system, where children were taken directly from their homes and sent to serve the Sultan? This story is not about heroism, but about mass silence and oblivion. Eunuchs in the Ottoman Empire are often portrayed in textbooks as impeccable administrators, but their tragedy is hardly ever mentioned. From the mid-14th to the mid-18th centuries, by order of the sultans, boys were forcibly taken from Christian villages in the Balkans, castrated, and taught how to run the palace. Official documents describe the Devshirme as an effective recruitment system, but completely ignore the pain and lost lives of those left without a home. This is the story of Milos, who was taken to the palace at the age of 12 and became a loyal servant of the Sultan, but paid for it with a permanent break with his family and the loss of his father's name. His fate was echoed in thousands of lists of nameless children whose names were burned along with the papers, and whose destinies melted away in the cold archives of Istanbul. This is how civilizations perish, not in bloody battles, but in the systematic oblivion of their victims. When society recognizes that human life can be turned into a commodity for entertainment and power, it sows the seeds of moral decay. Even if the years have taken away much of the evidence, the cries of those boys still echo in the silence of the palace corridors. Their pain is not healed by time, and their stories bleed silently in the collective memory of humanity.